Is America shifting back to the days of the Underground Railroad? We're seeing reports across the country of churches acting as safe havens in response to President Trump's executive orders demanding that illegal immigrants be deported with haste. Joining me now is Pastor Justo Gonzalez. He is pastor of Pilgrim St. Luke's and El Nuevo Camino United Church of Christ. Thank you for joining me, sir.
No problem.
First, can you give us a little bit of an insight into what's going on and how many churches are involved?
We have decided that it is our call to serve and to welcome any undocumented folks, as well as refugees who are also fearful given this new administration's policies. We unanimously voted on January the 29th to create a sanctuary church here in Buffalo, New York. We have publicly stated that we will open our doors and have when there is fear of raids or if a raid occurs. Likewise, we are working with our coalition partners in labor, in the solidarity movement, as well as community activists and immigrant rights organizations to provide housing, to provide food, to make sure that our global sisters and brothers are taken care of. For me and my church, what that specifically means is one, opening our facility, and two, we have a commercial kitchen, and we have allowed on a monthly basis, and will continue to do so, for these immigrants to create a pop-up restaurant every month, and those resources go 100% back to them to cover the rents, provide for their phone bills so that they can reach out and be in touch with families abroad, to provide some food and food subsidies, and to make sure that they are taken care of. We've just are very clear that part of our DNA is always to stand with the other and to welcome folks in our community.
So from a humanitarian standpoint, I totally get this, but at the end of the day, this is against the law. Have you had critics say that this is simply not your place?
I've had, out of all these multiple interviews, two folks reach out. They weren't particularly thrilled with what we're doing, but the reality is that the vast majority get it. Of course, we want to be good citizens and we want to be a church that doesn't break laws. But more importantly than the policies and the laws of the United States are the laws of God, to welcome, to care for the other. From a theological perspective, the Holy See, as well as other faith communions, including my own National United Church of Christ, articulates and believes and affirms that every country has the right to articulate its territorial boundaries. However, when abject poverty, violence, gangs, human trafficking, NAFTA that has destroyed small farmers, impacts folks that they can't provide for themselves, care for their families, care for their future, everyone has the right to cross those borders, and borders melt away at human needs. So yes, there's a US policy, but there's a broader theological understanding that immigrants have the right to earn the bread of life, and my parents did too when they migrated.
So the government knows where you are. What's stopping federal agents from raiding the church and saying, hey, you got to get out?
Well, absolutely nothing stops the government from coming here, at least legally. There is a memorandum of understanding with Homeland Security with regard to enforcement that advises not to enter into what they term sensitive areas, sensitive settings, and churches are classified as a sensitive setting. However, the reality is that when we open our doors, whether it is to house people permanently or have them come as they have come when there has been fears of potential raids, they can walk in the door. The optics would look horrible once we start putting it live and start taking pictures. And quite frankly, I and other members of my community are willing to stand in the gap and be arrested if need be.
Because I was about to ask that. You could be arrested for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, what is my call? Where do I stand as a person of faith, as a person of values? I am very clear. The prophet Micah says, and what does the Lord require of you? But to love kindness, do justice, and walk humbly with your God. to not stand up and resist these policies that negate the human dignity of another is to speak pretty words on Sunday that are meaningless on Monday. And I refuse to have my beliefs, my values be meaningless, and so does my congregation.
You know, I can't help but think that what you're describing is a tension between your faith and the laws of the land. Is this the beginning of a resistance or a redefining of what this nation is?
Well, I think others have started to redefine it in ways that have not been what we as Americans historically believed it to be. So they are doing the redefining. My job, my responsibility is to resist unjust laws. Martin Luther King said, an injustice for one is an injustice for all. So that we need to stand up. There is a new Underground Railroad movement that is organic and happening across the country. I did not realize that as we stood publicly in Buffalo and Western New York, that I would start getting donations from people across the country, that I would get emails from immigrants and phone calls looking for safe passage and a safe space, and other families and individuals throughout the country that are writing me saying, hey, we have a home. We're willing to help with this. We're willing to take in people. People get it. We need to honor the lives of others and their dignity. We cannot allow those forces of hate which are attempting to divide us and separate us and criminalize people to have the last word. And if I may, just a sentence on that.
Go ahead.
The other day I was chatting with a woman in my car and I said, you know, these folks are criminals, at least by the law. She goes, well, what did they do? And I smiled. What they did was move from one employer to another with their H-2 visa without getting prior approval. That makes them a criminal. What they did was overstay their visa. That makes them a criminal. What they're doing is driving a car to go to work or pick up their children, and that makes them a criminal, when we are the ones that are criminalizing them and then saying, look, you see, that's a horrible criminal. Nonsense. It is a mother, a father, a human being trying to provide bread for their subsistence, trying to be decent, respectful human beings. And quite frankly, these folks are paying billions of dollars into Social Security that they will never, ever be able to recuperate. Now, who's the criminal?
You know, I can't help but think that what you're describing and the scope of this conversation is saying is that we're experiencing a major shift. What kind of conversations are you having with your congregation? Are they concerned that worse things are ahead?
Oh, I truly believe that this administration and the forces of hate will do everything that they can to continue to ratchet up the them and us, to criminalize others, and to pit U.S. citizens one against the other. It serves their broader agenda if we're not paying attention to what they're trying to do by destroying Social Security, by destroying health care for all, by making Medicaid and Medicare into block grants. They can easily get that done. So let them, their strategy is to divert. Our strategy is to say to folks, do not be deceived. Things are going to get worse, but what we are experiencing also is a phenomenal influx of young and old, white, black, Hispanic, Christian, Jew, Muslim, people of faith, people of no faith, but of high morals and ethical beliefs, who are standing together and committing themselves to resist on behalf of what's right, and not to allow the voices of distraction, the voices of hate, to separate us. And that to me is an awesome thing that is just happening organically.
Pastor Justo Gonzalez, thank you for sharing with us your passion, and I hope that we can stay in touch. Hopefully, as the days go on, we're going to see more progressive moves than any sort of triumph by the forces of hate.
Indeed. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and to have an opportunity to engage your viewers.